So here's the deal. This is going to be a workshop style. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover a bunch of content, and then we're going to go into some Q&A, and then we're going to cover a little bit more content, and then go into a little bit more Q&A, because I need this to be crystal clear for you. So kind of see it like race car driving. We're going to slow down during the turns, make sure everything is checked and in place, and then once it is, we're going to go ahead and accelerate through again that next turn into the straightaway. So let's talk a little bit about what we're going to cover today and then get right into it. Today, I'm going to reveal what I call the rapid scaling matrix. It's how to scale your Facebook ad campaigns up to $80,000 a day or more, should you want to, but how to do it without compromising your ROIs, because a lot of people know how to spend money on Facebook, but it's another thing to do that without compromising your ROIs. And to do that, I'm going to show you 4 specific stages that build on top of one another, or more specifically, my 4 strategies that make up this very specific rapid scaling matrix. Now, again, as a bonus, I'm also going to reveal to you a couple of core foundational things that for whatever reason, I see a lot of people kind of miss, and I want to make sure that you have those in place. And then, of course, we're going to do Q&A all the way throughout the end. So just before we get started, or as we're getting started here, here's why this is important. Number one, if you don't understand what we're going to talk about today, you're not going to be able to scale. So it's kind of like you're stuck in a box. You're going to be stuck wherever you are right now. So if you're spending $1,000 a day, you're kind of going to be stuck there. If it's $5,000 a day or $10,000 a day, you've kind of been stuck in a box where you can't explode out of. Now, if you can't scale, well, then you can't grow. It's like you're stuck wherever you are. You're being squeezed out of your full capability to expand where you need to be. Now, if you can't scale and you can't grow, then ultimately problem 3, you are stuck and or stalled, and you're going to watch your competition by the side of the road swing right past you. And we don't want that. Now, if you can't scale, you can't grow, and you're stuck or stalled, ultimately that leaves you frustrated, as though it's like it's just out of reach for you to be able to take your business to that kind of like next level, but it's just out of that reach, so you can't quite reach it. We do not want you to feel frustrated. We want you to feel the opposite. So by the end of this, if you truly understand what we're going to be talking about today, 3 things are going to happen. Number 1, you're going to be able to scale easy. You're going to be able to scale your Facebook campaigns at will to whatever spend you are looking to spend. Now, if you can scale at will, it also means rapid growth. If you can go from profitably spending $1,000 a day and stay profitable at $10,000 a day or $20,000 a day, then essentially your business and your revenue is going to see rapid growth. And if you can scale easily and see rapid growth, then of course you experience forward momentum. And the side effects of forward momentum include not only growth in revenue, but a whole ton of other opportunities that can begin to open up for you. So if you can scale easily, you can experience rapid growth, and you can have forward momentum, then you're going to be just like this guy. In other words, you're going to be a happy camper and not frustrated, but you're going to experience a great thumbs up type experience. Now, just to kind of put this in perspective for you, there was a launch that we ran, I'd say just over a month ago or so, and here was the scenario. We had 13 days in pre-launch to reach as many people as humanly possible with this life-changing message. And just to give you some perspective, this is what ended up happening. We started from a 0 ad spend on day 1, and we were able to, by the last day, scale up to 60,000 plus a day in ad spend when it was all said and done. In fact, this was just one campaign. When you target in all the other things that we're doing, we were spending approximately $100,000 a day at the tail end of this campaign. And that reached a whole ton of people. It gave us a whole ton of leads. And most importantly, it gave us a whole ton of revenue. In fact, this particular campaign ended up doing about $16 million when it was all said and done, from start to about end, which was about 21 days later. So let's dive right in and get going. Before I actually reveal the 4 stages or strategies, I want to make sure that we are all on the same page. And in order for us to do that, I need to make sure that we lay a little bit of groundwork here. So we're using the same terminology and we're approaching this scaling game on the same page. And to do that, you need to understand three things. Number one, architecture, or specifically campaign architecture. Number two, the magic metric, and I'll get into more of what that it is. And thirdly, the pond. So let's dive right in. Number one, campaign architecture. See, the name of the game when you're scaling, especially to high levels of spend, is that you have full control. You need to have full control of your bids, of your audiences, of the impressions that you're getting, literally everything in your campaign. You need to have full control over that. Now, because that is the case, we want to set up our campaigns in a very specific way. At least this is how I set up my campaigns, that will both give us ease of reporting and ease of execution, as well as full control. So for example, when you're setting up a campaign, you're familiar that campaign architecture has campaigns, ad sets, and ads. Now at the campaign level, what I'm going to suggest is that here is where you are going to name or categorize your campaign based on your main offer, the placement that this campaign is going to be displayed on, i.e. mobile, desktop, or right side. And if you are going beyond a specific country into multiple countries, then the campaign will also identify the country. So if you were, let's say, to name this, it might look something like this. T-shirt offer, a mobile placement, in USA. Now again, you can kind of swap those in and out as you see fit, but at the campaign level, this is how we are approaching our campaigns. Then at the ad set level, obviously, this is where all the structure elements sit in place. So this is where we do our targeting, some of our bidding, some of our interests, all that type of stuff happens at the ad set level. And of course, at the ads level, we are talking about copy and images. Now, there are a few rules, and more specifically, 2 rules that I'm going to request that you follow every time you structure out your campaigns in order to ensure, again, full transparency and ease of execution, as well as full control. Rule number 1 is one ad per ad set. I'll give you a second to write that down if you're taking notes. Again, one ad per ad set. Now you might be asking, why would we want to do one ad per ad set? Well, ultimately the answer is control. Because you may have noticed if you're running campaigns where you have a campaign, you have an ad set, and in an ad set you have more than one ad, you might see something like this happening, where Facebook starts to favor one of your ads and not the other. So when you look at reach, you will see that one is clearly the favorite that Facebook is giving all the impressions to, and then the other one is not so much. Now that would be, theoretically Facebook is doing that because they think that that campaign is working better based on the number of clicks and the cost per click. But the reality is there could be a whole bunch of variations around that. And so because of that, we want full control. And the only way to get full control is to put one ad per ad set. And this way we can determine spend, we can determine budget, we can determine impressions, and we're not giving Facebook the control to display these ads as they want to. We're going to take back the control and choose to display it how we choose to. So if you're going with the one ad per ad set rule, then this is what your naming might look like, okay? So copy 1 plus image 1 plus target. Because remember, placement and offer is already happening at the campaign level. So at the ad set level, it would say copy 1, image 1, and target. And let's say we're doing a split test where we're split testing 2 different image variations with the same copy to the same target. Then it could be copy 1, image 2, target. Now, if we want to kind of expand this even further, then it could be copy 2, image 1, target, and copy 2, image 2, target. So let me give you a little bit of an example of one of how our campaigns is kind of set up here. And you can see that if we are following this protocol of one ad per ad set and we're following this naming structure, then afraid and tech are our 2 copy indicators. The middle words, camera outside blue and pink, are our image indicators. And the LS, TM, RS are our audience or our target indicator. So what you can see here is that even for, let's say, the LS target, we could run copy 1, which is afraid, and image 1, which is camera, image 2, which is outside. And you can see that how we do that with a tech copy, and again with a different audience with afraid. So this is, again, really important when you're setting up your ad structure, that one ad per ad set, so you have full control and you have full ease of execution. That is rule number 1, one ad per ad set. Rule number 2, which I've already alluded to and you probably made note of already, is where you separate out your placements at the campaign level. So this is going to make things really, really easy for you, so you can take a look at your reporting at a glance and actually see what is going on without having to worry too much. And the reason we separate it out at the campaign level is because different placements operate on very different premises. And you will see that certain placements get better results depending on the promotion versus other placements. So at this level, you could separate campaigns for desktop newsfeed, mobile newsfeed, or desktop right side, because again, all will perform very differently. Now here's an example of how we are kind of setting up our campaigns. You can see at the campaign level, this campaign it has the name of the main offer and it has the placement, which again in this case is desktop, and because we're only running to the US, then we're not going to actually indicate the country here. If we were running other countries, we would break that up into the various countries at the campaign level. So I'm going to take us just a quick step back here and open up the floor for any questions around anything we have covered thus far, specifically around the 2 rules that you need to follow around one ad per ad set or campaign architecture and separating out placements at the campaign level. Cool. So Daryl, or someone is asking, I use Ad Espresso and it often bundles mobile audience network. Yes, that is a big deal to me, and that's one of the reasons why I don't use automation tools like Ad Espresso or Qzx900 because it doesn't give me the control to set up campaigns at the level that I like to. So I'm actually running everything out of the Power Editor. Devin's asking, what tool do you use to publish these? Seem like it would take a million years to set it up this way. Yes and no. We're using the Power Editor to do this internally, but if you know quickly how to duplicate things, it makes it actually very easy and it doesn't take all that long, although it does take much longer than you were using if you were using a tool. Do you stuff more than one interest into an ad set or target one interest per ad set? Yes, we always target only one interest or one target specifically per ad set. And the reason why is because, again, it gives us full control. And so what we'll be able to see is, hey, this interest or this target is outperforming that interest or target, and that interest or target is outperforming that one. So we'll always separate them out at the ad set level. Does it say, do you always separate placements out, or do you sometimes do them together and let Facebook optimize? No, we will always separate them out, because if you lump them together, Facebook is going to favor mobile over desktop and give all your impressions to mobile and none to desktop. And they will favor right side versus newsfeed. So you'll see a frequency score of like 19 plus on the right side and not so much on your desktop. So that's the reason why we kind of always separate those out. Can we put duplicate ads in the same ad set? No, I always separate out, follow the rule, one ad per ad set. Next question. If you test ad plus image, example 5 variations, and find 1 or 2 strong ones, as you move into the testing of other audiences, do you always start with the best ones? The short answer is yes. We always start with the best ones, but I'm going to tell you and show you a way where you can expand that out quite quickly. Next question. So this is done so that you can easily shut off placements, targets, and ads that are not working, correct? Yes, it's both for shutting off things that aren't working, as well as optimizing those that are, as well as identifying what is in fact working versus what isn't. Because you will see if you go after the same target, desktop might outperform mobile, and that way you can have easy control of turning them off and or scaling and optimizing. You will probably cover this later, but each ad set is a different interest. The answer is yes. Should we split test all the placements when starting out a campaign? Yes, I typically do. Usually for cold, I will go after the news feed primarily and then mix in a little bit of right side. But yes, I test all placements unless the offer is specific to, like if I'm going to run an offer to something that doesn't have a mobile responsive or mobile optimized site, then of course I'm not going to use that. Question, no automation tools. The answer is no, all manual through the Power Editor. I'm going to do a couple of more here and then move on. I've been told that duplicating the audience in separate ad sets to run single ads would cause an issue in pricing, being that you are competing against yourself. No, that's not in fact true, and I show tons and tons of evidence against that, but if that is an issue, I will show you how you can counter that, no problem. Does it matter what the ad type is? Website clicks, PPV, etc. Is it the same foundation? Yes, it does matter, and I will go into just a second why it does and how to break that up. Do you ever test having mobile as Wi-Fi only or splitting up mobile devices? Jeremy, yes, depending on the offer. So sometimes we'll separate out iPhones and Android. Sometimes we'll separate out tablets from iPhones, depending on what the offer is. That's getting really granular, not necessary most of the time, but yes, if it calls for you can do that. Scott says, do you have to change targeting a bit when separating ad sets so you are not competing against yourself? Scott, again, the short answer is not technically no, but if it really bothers you and doesn't give you peace of mind to do that, what the counter to that is literally changing your age range by 1 year, and that will give you peace of mind. Again, I haven't seen empirical evidence that you are competing against yourself, but it gives you much better sleep at night to separate those out. Go ahead and do that. Wes says, is there a typical audience size that you look for? The answer is no and yes. When you scale, you want bigger audiences, but I'll go into that in just a second. Do you use interests with your lookalike audiences? Yes, we'll get into that in just a moment, but the short answer is not when we start, but we can as we scale. Can you please give another example of how you separated out placements at the ad set level? Yeah, Lilia, that's simple. I mean, campaign 1 could be desktop, campaign 2 can be same offer but mobile, and campaign 3 is same offer but offering it to right side. Does audience size, Daryl's asking, does audience size for new campaigns matter? If so, what size and what do you look for and what do you start with? Daryl will get to that in just a second. What's the volume per interest that you want at minimum? That's the same question. We'll get there in just a second. Is there a typical, everyone's asking about audience size. Are you using a software to track each link? The answer is yes and no. Facebook primarily, and then we will use stuff like Wicked Reports or other things on the back end, Google Analytics, to kind of track deeper into that. Just 3 more questions and then we'll move on. How do you get around ads dying quickly within a day or two and never showing it to the full audience? Yes, we'll cover that in just a second. When you test interest, do you put 1 interest per ad set without using the narrow audience options so you don't care about overlapping audiences? Yes, 1 interest or 1 target per ad set without the narrow audience options to start, and I'll show you why in just a second. All right, so that was great. That was a whole ton of questions. Let's keep moving on. It seems like everyone's got the campaign architecture thing down. Let's move on to foundational principle number 2, and that is what I call the magic metric. See, the entire ROI of any Facebook campaign is going to come down to you knowing and answering 2 simple questions. I'll say that one more time. The entire ROI of any Facebook campaign is going to come down to you knowing and answering 2 simple questions. Number 1, what is your 30-day value of a lead or a customer? Now, I use the word 30 in there. I use the time 30 in there. That could be lifetime. That could be 90 days. It could be 180 days. It could be 14 days. I just am saying 30 in this particular example because I'm going to assume that your customer and or client at first exposure to you is probably going to buy from you within the first 30 days with multiple touch points. So 30 days is a nice window for you to determine how much that customer is worth to you within that window. And so that's question number 1. Question number 2 is what percentage of that value am I willing to spend on acquisition? Again, what percentage of that value am I willing to spend on acquisition? So here's how to figure it out very simply for those of you who haven't done this exercise. The first thing is you take you total your 30-day revenue from leads that came in from the same source, in this case Facebook. You're going to divide that from the number of leads and or customers that came in during that time. and that gives you a 30-day value. So for example, for really, really easy numbers, so to make sure that everyone gets this, if you had 100 customers that led to $1,000 in revenue, or 100 leads that led to $1,000 in revenue, it would give you a $10 per value. Now, the next question again is, what percentage of that are you willing to spend on acquisition? Are you willing to spend 25% of that value on acquisition? Are you willing to spend 50, 100, or even 110%? And yes, you did hear me correctly, 110%, because a lot of people know, if they know that the lifetime value of their customer outweighs the initial 30-day value of a customer, they're willing to spend even more in acquisition for that customer because they know it will be made up on the back end. So think about this. Let's just use easy numbers again. And for the sake of this example, let's say 50% is the percentage that you're willing to spend on acquisition. So if we had 100 leads at $1,000 of revenue, we have a $10 value. 50% of that would be $5 acquisition cost, and that in turn is your magic metric. Now let me just kind of throw a sidewinder in here. The more you are able to spend on acquisition, the better it will be to A, beat your competition all day and all night, and B, scale the hell out of the campaign. So please note, we are not in the game of cheap acquisition. In fact, I'm going to argue the opposite. We are in the game of seeing how much we can spend on acquisition, because the rule is he who can spend more on acquisition wins the game. You will beat your competition and you'll be able to scale far more favorably. So the side note here then is, think about anything you can do to increase the initial and the lifetime value of a customer. If that means upsells and cross-sells, then increase that. If it means increasing the pricing, if it means that you have an ascension model that sends them higher into level programs or higher level products earlier on in your process, then figure out, how can I increase the initial and the lifetime value of a customer in order to give me more range to be able to spend more on acquisition. Now, once you know this magic metric, which is essentially your 30-day value and the percentage of that value that you're willing to spend on acquisition, we follow a very simple red, yellow, green light rule when we move forward with things. And so here kind of is the example. And let me just draw this home, because this is very important when we get into how to scale. It will determine what you can do and when you can do it. So the red, yellow, green is a very simple process that says, if my acquisition cost, and again, for very easy numbers, we're going to say $5. If my acquisition cost that I'm willing to spend is $5 per acquisition, let's say you start running a campaign from scratch, and within 24 to 48 hours, your acquisition comes in at $12.95. What are you going to do? Now, that's a rhetorical question. Well, actually, let's just throw it out there. Go ahead and type in the Q&A box. If your magic metric is $5, your acquisition costs start to come in at $12.95 for a particular ad set. What are you going to do? Yep, Noah's got it. Stop. Yeah, so in my scenario, what I would do, because I don't have time to spend on this, is that to me is a red light. And a red light to me says, stop that particular ad set. Keep in mind, I got multiple things going on. This is not the only ad set that I am relying on, but this particular ad set, if leads are coming in at $12.95, my magic metric is $5, that puppy is being turned off for now. I might come back to it later, but it's going to be turned off for now. Now, same scenario. I'm running a particular ad set. Now, this ad set, we are generating leads or customers at $2.39 per acquisition. Remember, our magic metric is $5. What are you going to do in that scenario? I know it seems obvious, but I just want to make sure that everyone's tracking. Yes, spend, scale, go, keep pushing. Exactly. So that would be the result of a green light. So our first one is a red light because it is over our acquisition cost. Our second one is a green light because it's under our acquisition cost. But now here's kind of a middle ground. Let's say that we were running a campaign and this particular ad set was generating leads at $5.17 per acquisition. Remember, our magic metric is $5. We are now acquiring at $5.17. What do you do in this case? People are saying still good. Still good. Proceed with caution. Happens a lot. Duplicate and change the image. Drill down, some people say. The screen is still. Yes, it is still. There's just a traffic light on the screen. No worries there. Switch to manual bidding. Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of options that we can do here. My quick answer, again, if I'm short on time and I got to make this work right away, this is still considered above my magic metric. So what I'm immediately going to do is make a tweak to that ad set, which in my case will probably be an image variation split test to see if I can drill this down even further. Now that could be an image variation split test. It could be layering a lookalike on top of the interest targeting, whatever it be, but you are going to do a variation to bring that down. And this red, yellow, green light scenario is going to take out the emotion from your campaigns, because I see all the time, and I don't understand it, where if your acquisition cost is $5, then it's $5. That is your magic metric, and anything over that is a no-go. So if it is over that, it doesn't mean you necessarily have to turn it off, but you can make a tweak. So you can switch to manual bidding, as someone suggested. You can tweak out an image. You can layer a lookalike on top of that. You can do whatever you need to do, but the idea is make sure you make a tweak to bring it into a green light scenario. Again, this is ultra important because when you start to scale and your spends go ultra high, you have no time or emotional capacity to start making decisions based on how you feel or assumptions or emotions. You need to make it on hard data. So here's an example of a particular campaign that we're running, and our magic metric was $6 acquisition, $6 a conversion. And as you can see, we are running multiple ad sets in this campaign, and we had a whole bunch on the top that were under our $6 acquisition or CPA. So we let those run and we started to scale those out. But then we had a whole bunch at the bottom that were over, or they were red lighted. They were over our conversion cost or our CPA. So we immediately red lighted them. We don't spend any time thinking about how to make the ones that aren't working better just yet. Our focus is making the ones that are working work even better and keep running with the winners and dropping the losers. So once you have these numbers in place, you can then easily determine when to scale and when to bail and when you need to tweak. So I hope that was clear. This is going to lay some groundwork for, when we move into exactly the scaling strategies. But before we do that, again, any questions about the magic metric and about the red, yellow, and green light principle, go ahead and type those in the Q&A box so I can make sure that everyone is clear and answered that. Noah's asking, back to the initial architecture, you said at the ad level your naming structure is copy and images. Can you give an example of how you would name your ads? Yes, actually the ads are named the exact same as the ad set because there's only one ad per ad set, so we always do that. Alfredo asks, how long do you let an ad run? When we start a campaign from scratch, we're going to let that run for 24 to 48 hours before making a decision on red, yellow, or green. However, if in the first 12 to 15 to 24 hours, the numbers are just ruthless and they're a clear red, we're going to turn those off for now. But ideally, you want 24 hours or so for Facebook to optimize for you to make a real good decision about that. So when something is yellow, do you modify the original or do you have to make an adjustment in the new ad set again? Sanu, that's a great question. We never, ever edit ad sets. We always duplicate the ad set and make the edit in the duplication. And that's going to ensure that you're not losing momentum or messing with the algorithm. So great question. You will duplicate the yellow light, you will turn it off, and you will make the modification to the duplication and let that run from beginning. All right? Claire asks, do you ever schedule ads? I see that you are running ads on daily spends, not lifetime spends. Yes, most of the campaigns that we run, Claire, are evergreen, meaning they never technically end. So we're typically always running them on daily spends. Lifetime, maybe if we're doing some sort of a time webinar type thing where something needs to happen. Stacy's asking, how long would it be good to run an ad before determining? Again, 48 hours, 24 to 48 hours is good. What rule of thumb do you use when running a completely new funnel, and do you know 30-day revenue? If you're running a completely new funnel and you don't know those numbers, you want to trickle traffic through your funnel and then make some decisions about what those are as soon as possible. Any specific day you start a new campaign? Taryn, that's a great question. Not a specific day, but any new campaign, we always start first thing in the morning and on a weekday. I'll repeat that, always start first thing in the morning and start on a weekday, because weekend traffic is different from weekday traffic, and we want to give an ad the full duration of the day, all parts of the day, to see how well it performs. What budget do you start with? We'll get into that in just a second. Do you recommend Wicked Reports? Yes, we use that, but you can use whatever you want, Wesley. 2 more questions, 3 more questions, then we'll get moving on. Do you use the same page post permalinks for multiple ad sets if you're using the same ads with different targeting? The answer is absolutely yes, Caitlin. That will maintain your social proof and the momentum in the ads. How do you determine which targets are interest to test and how much spend when testing? That's kind of we'll get into that in just a little bit here, but a lot of that's just going to be through market research and tools like Audience Insights. That's going to allow you to choose where to start. Dell's asking, you're giving times, but is there a number of impressions or clicks that you're looking for in those 24 to 48 hours? Yes, at least 1,000 impressions is kind of the minimum standard within 24 hours, or a few thousand within 48. That's kind of a general rule there. There is no hard rule of law, but there is a rule of thumb. I hope that helps. All right, so it looks like we're tracking really well. Let's move on to the next portion of this. And that is what I call the pond, the lake, and the oceans. In other words, audiences. And this is going to help answer some of the questions that were currently asked here. Because the size of the demographic that you are reaching and the time that you have to reach them is going to determine how quickly you can and you should scale. So let me repeat that. The size of the demographic that you're reaching and the time you have to reach them is going to determine how quickly you can and should scale. Because think about this. If you have an audience size of 10,000, you don't really need to scale. You're going to reach that audience no matter what. But if you have an audience size of 10 million, and you have all the time in the world to scale, then you can do things slowly and steady. So the tortoise wins the race. But if you only have 7 or 14 days to reach them in a typical launch scenario or a time constraint scenario, then you really need to know how to scale quickly. So the general rule of thumb here is don't scale too quickly unless you have to. But don't get greedy and do it the proper way, which I'm about to show you how, because there may be situations in a launch or something like that where you have no choice but to scale quickly. But if you can avoid that, I would suggest slow and steady, because that wins the race. So to start, if we're looking at audiences, this is how I approach any new campaign to any new audience. And it starts by training your conversion pixel and getting very specific with your audiences. And this is what I call the pond. It's your smallest audience, and it's going to give you a bunch of good data. So at first, when you're running campaigns, you're going to rely on your targeting, your copy, and your images in very small ponds to be able to reach the people, or the lowest hanging fruit, the people who are most likely going to convert into a sale or a lead. Because the goal in this stage 1, if you will, the pond stage, is you want to get as many leads or as many sales as possible with the lowest acquisition cost as you possibly can, with the goal of training your conversion pixel. Now, you can't scale at this level because your audience is going to be too small. But what you are looking to do is set up for stage 2. So when you're doing your audience research and if you're using Audience Insights or whatever market research tool you're using, you want to start with the lowest hanging fruit and going after the ones who are most likely going to convert, again, with the goal here to train the pixel. Now, once you have at least, and I say at least, this is not a hard number, but this is the minimum number. Once you have at least 1,000 conversions, whether that's leads or sales, once you have at least 1,000 conversions, we expand beyond your very targeted audience of ponds, and we move into what I will call bigger pools or lakes. And what's going to happen here is essentially you can start utilizing lookalike audiences because you've trained the pixel to reach 1,000 people. You are then going to create a lookalike audience around at least those 1,000 conversions, which is going to give you a 2 million person pool if you're focusing, let's say, on the United States. Other countries give you a smaller pool at a 1% lookalike, so let's just say United States. You're going to get about a 2 million person pool, and this is your lake. So before you were relying specifically on your targeting and your skills to generate sales, now you're kind of splitting that with Facebook, and you're relying half on your skills and half on Facebook and this now semi-trained pixel to be able to reach these larger audiences, this 2 million person audience, and with the objective of continuing to train this pixel and season this pixel so it gets smarter and smarter along the way. Now again, you can use a lookalike audience straight up, which would give you an audience of about 2 million people, or if you are, let's say, you're yellow lighting a particular audience. So you're going after a particular target, it's got like 4 million people in it, and you're yellow lighting, what you can do is you can layer now this lookalike audience on top of that larger interest audience. It will shrink down your pool, and it will most likely turn your yellow light into a green light. Okay? So you start with the pawns, which is smaller audience with the purpose of training pixels and getting as many conversions as humanly possible. Then you move to the lakes, which are your lookalike audiences or your layered lookalike audiences after you've got a minimum of 1,000 conversions. And then by this point, we're going to trust that your pixel is highly seasoned and working well, and you can now go broad and focus on the oceans. So once you have a trained pixel, and to me a trained pixel could be anything between 3,600 conversions and 10,000 conversions. I mean, this pixel has seen your ideal lead or your ideal customer multiple times through. Now, it could be less than that, but anywhere in that range. At this point, you can literally open up your broad targeting and say, I only want to go after people between the ages of 21 and 55 in the USA, and you are going to let your pixel now do all the heavy lifting. So here, Facebook has trained the pixel. The pixel is ultra smart because it's seen so many conversions. It is clear on the type of person that you're trying to reach. You can open up broad targeting and you can go after them at large. And this now is your area where you can start to scale. Now, again, you're relying on Facebook and broad audience targeting to do all the heavy lifting for you. And if the pixel is trained well enough, you can just kind of go after it. So the size of this audience doesn't really particularly matter in terms of how big it is, but when I say broad, I'm literally saying go after the entire country, possibly the gender, and pick a really, really wide age variation. So let's say like 21 to 65, literally. You're just opening up the targeting and you're letting Facebook do a lot of the heavy lifting for you at this point. And these size of audiences, which typically fall into the 5 million plus range, are what's going to give you the room to start scaling out. So let's go back. Any questions with regards to ponds, lakes, and oceans that we can clear up, and then we're going to dive right into the 4 strategies. Let's see what we got. Wesley says, OMG. I hope that's a good OMG, not a bad one, Wes. So is this right? In short? Targeting. Copying images in small audience, most likely going to buy. Once you have at least 1,000 conversions or sales, we can expand beyond them to lookalikes. And then once you've gotten beyond 2,500 to 10,000 customers, you can move to broad, Austin. Yes, that is exactly what we're saying. I don't understand the 5 million plus. Is that a lookalike? No, Claire, that is your broad audience. That is no lookalikes at this point. This is allowing your pixel to do all the heavy lifting, and you're going after the broadest audience within the age range and the country that you're going after. Greg is asking, Pixel, are you now using the Facebook pixel instead of the conversion pixel? Yes, new pixels versus old. The new pixels can be trained the same way the old can. Devin's asking, what happens later this year when they kill the old conversion pixels? I'm actually referring to the new pixels right right now. They are optimized the same way as the old, and you can use custom conversion pixel if that helps. Scott says, what about widening the percentage of the lookalike from 1 to 2%? Yep, you can do that if that makes sense for you. You can start widening them out as much as you want, and then going ultra broad or using that as much as you need. Daryl says, a pawn is less than 5 million, or is it 500,000? The numbers are not so important, but yes, I would say pawns typically fall into the category of less than 500,000 because, again, you're going after your lowest hanging fruit. Diago says, would we start with 1% lookalike audiences, 10% lookalike audience, or the combination? I would start with 1% and then go broader and broader as you need. Diago, Jeremy asks, is that just one ad set which targets a broad audience, or are you still splitting by age and gender? Correct. You're watching these at the ad set level and you are expanding accordingly. So campaigns with different placements could be at different phases of pond, lake, or ocean. Wes is asking, is this manual bidding for conversions or auto? We always start with auto, and in a few situations may go to manual, particularly if we're like in a yellow light scenario and we want to get to green, we might do that, or some other advanced things. Does conversions here literally mean purchases? Yes and no. So it could mean leads if you're generating leads, or if you're running an e-com store and actually going for purchases, it does mean purchases, yes. Do you have 1,000 conversions? Do you have to have 1,000 conversions to do lookalikes? Yes, I would suggest that. It just has a smarter lookalike. If you have anything less than that, it's going to cause some problems. Noah's saying, so good. How do you let the pixel do all the heavy lifting? By this point, Daryl, the pixel is trained, and the pixel will automatically do all the heavy lifting. You just go after broad audiences and you let it do the work. And again, you're watching for red, yellow, and green lighting here. Stacy, two more questions here. Would an existing list from Facebook work for lake and ocean scaling outside the pixel? Yes, an already existing list would function as a pond and potentially as a lake if you use the list with your lookalike audiences. There, cool. So that was the foundation. Let's dive in to the 4 key strategies of the rapid scaling matrix. These are the 4 steps or the 4 strategies that you need to deploy in order to really make this work for you. So let's kind of dive right in here into the 4 key strategies needed to scale. Now, the strategy that most people unfortunately use when they scale is increase my daily budget. I think this is what most people do, right? So let's say we have a campaign that's working at $20 a day, so we increase it to $100 a day, and then we increase it to $1,000 a day, and we're like, yeah, man, this is working. Let me just go ahead and go gangbusters on the spend here. The problem when you do this, and holler at me in the Q&A box if this makes sense to you, is number one, there's 2 problems. Number one, when you scale like this by simply increasing your daily budget haphazardly, number one, your cost per acquisition goes up. Yes or no? Yes, your cost per website click goes up, Osman said. Yes, it goes up. Yes, boo. So this is the way that most people scale, and yet is the most inaccurate way to do it because CPA goes up, as everyone is just saying, or your conversions just stop. So that's problem number one. You end up having a working campaign and you turn it into a non-working campaign, and that is not what we want to do. Or secondly, and even worse, your ad account gets flagged. Now, I've seen people literally go from $20 a day ad spends and change it to $1,000 a day. They scale too quick and too hard. Facebook assumes that you are a spammer, and they say, well, wait a second. This looks like it's kind of funny business. And so your ad account has been recently flagged because of unusual activity. We've seen that happen multiple times. So you don't want to come across to Facebook as a spammer. So then what is the solution? Well, stage 1 is what I call pace budgeting. Let me say that again. Stage 1 is what I call pace budgeting. So here's where you want to start your daily bids when it comes to your daily budget. I like to use this general rule of thumb. Now, you don't have to follow it to the T, but in general, where I like to start is your daily budget should be 3 to 5x of your max magic metric. Okay, that's a tongueful, I know, but start at 3 to 5x your max magic metric. So let's say your magic metric, the most you're willing to spend on acquisition, absolutely the most you can spend, again, for the sake of the example, is $5 per acquisition. So your daily starting bids on any particular ad set should be between $15 and $25. Now, I would probably pick $20 because that is right between, it's 4x my magic metric in that scenario. But basically, your daily starting bids need to start at 3 to 5x. Now, if your acquisition cost is a lot higher, you can start higher, or I would start at 1 to 2x what your magic metric is. So if your purchase is, let's say, a couple $100 or even like $30 to $50, you can easily start at 1 to 2x, whatever that is. And this is your daily budget. Okay, this is the daily spend, the max daily spend that you're willing to spend. This is where you start. Then, once you've started here, we let the campaigns roll and we start to increase your daily budgets, but we do it at the right pace. And this is why I call it pace budgeting. Here's my rule of thumb. You increase your daily budgets to 15 to 20% a day every other day at the very least. Let me repeat that one more time. 15 to 20% a day increases every other day at the very least. Now, if you're not in a rush, it should be every day or every 2 days. If you're in a little bit of a launch scenario, you may want to kind of squeeze that down and break the rule just a little bit. But what this is going to allow you to do is at the 15 to 20% increases, these increases are small enough not to mess around with your current winning campaigns or your current winning ad sets, and not to mess around with those stats, but still allow you to scale slowly but surely. Now, why do we wait every other day, or at least every other day? Because Facebook takes approximately 48 hours to optimize a campaign. So if you are changing your budgets even before Facebook gets to fully optimize, that's why you start to see your CPAs go through the roof. It's because just before Facebook can optimize, you've changed it again, the algorithm resets. And when the algorithm resets, you got to do it again, and it messes everything up. So again, the general rule of thumb for pace budgeting is you start at 3 to 5x your max magic metric, or if you have a high acquisition cost, it could be 1 to 2x that amount. And then you want to set your budget and increase those budgets 15 to 20% a day every other day to allow Facebook to optimize it and to ensure that you are not going over your max magic metric. Now, here's the reality. Even if you do this, okay, you will get to a point where when you are pace budgeting, you will still eventually hit the point of diminishing returns. So you start at $50 a day, you end up at 100, it's still good. You end up at 150, it's still good. Then all of a sudden you get to 250 and it's not working anymore. So what do you do in that kind of scenario? First thing you do for pace budgeting is you scale it back 1 or 2 steps to when it was profitable. So again, if we're going at, like, let's say $50 increases for whatever reason, and you've gone from 100 to 150 to 200 to 250, and at 250 all of a sudden you've gone from a green light to a red light, you are going to scale back from 250 to either 200 or 150 back to your profitable range, and you will see that your CPA will come back down and settle to where it was before it went bonkers. So again, you're going to pace budget, you're going to increase the budgets at 15 to 20% every other day at the least until you hit the point of diminishing returns. When your green light turns into yellow or a red light, you're going to scale back 1 or 2 steps. And then when you do that, you're going to get back to a place where everything is ready and you'll proceed to stage 2. Now, before I get into stage 2, let me open up any questions about pace budgeting. Are there any questions about pace budgeting, stage 1 of the rapid scaling matrix here? The new increased budgets are in new ad sets, correct? No, Michael, the new increased budgets are happening within your winning ad sets in this case. So you're increasing the winners by the pace that I just mentioned here. What does every other day mean? It literally means if you've increased it on Monday, the next increase will happen on Wednesday, and then the next increase will happen on Friday. But you want to allow at least a day in between for things to settle. Noah says, you said you can squeeze your pace budgeting into a higher window if needed. What's possible? Noah, the reality is if you want to do this even multiple times a day, you can in a launch scenario, but I guarantee you're going to hit red light a lot quicker. So you need to watch it far more carefully, and it's going to be a little bit more difficult to manage that way. So instead, I would move on to phase 2, which I'm going to reveal in just a second on how you need to do that. Jeremy says, so are you saying the max you can increase an ad set is 20% every 24 hours? Jeremy, I'm saying that that is a rule of thumb. I'm not saying that that is a rule of law, but I'm saying it is a rule of thumb and one that we tend to follow in order to keep things safe and not screw around with our metrics. Seamus asks, this is about ad sets, right? The answer is yes, it's all at the ad set level. Scott says, in a situation of a webinar and where you have less than 3 to 5 days, does this still make sense or not so much? It does make sense, but you will just escalate the velocity of this and you will watch it closely and you will move into phase 2 and 3, preferably 2, to make this work within tight time frames. And I'll get into 2 in just a second. Is there a particular time you increase the budget, and do you increase it every day on the fixed hour of the day? No, we increase it every other day, and usually to start at the beginning of the day. Just like when we start new ad sets, we start them at the beginning of the day. Same thing for these new budgets. Does this increase apply to all ponds, lakes, and oceans? Yes, it applies to everything that we're talking about, Lauren. Greg says, if I'm starting with a $5 a budget, and we're increasing only $1, can we move faster with small budgets? Yeah, if you're only starting with $5, Greg, no problem to move a little bit quicker than 20% a day. We're really talking about major spends to follow that rule. How do you get past 5K a day ad spends? Do you chat with Facebook support? Travis, yes. If you're going to get past 5X or 5K a day on a particular ad set, you would just go into Facebook chat, let them know you plan on spending a whole ton of money, increase your amounts to 10K a day or 20K a day or 50K a day or 100K a day, and then you won't see that happen. But you probably want to get to the point where Facebook is throttling you before you reach out to them so they can see that you are in fact reaching that cap, and they will open that for you. Don says, are you increasing the bidding as you go? Not the bidding, but the budgets. The bidding stay automatic. 2 last questions. Is it better to start ad sets at higher daily budgets rather than smaller? I would start smaller than higher, but if you're comparing between 25 and 5, both are smaller to me. So you can start at 25 and that's fine. In a nutshell, we only touch the budget of a winning ad, nothing else. Yes, losing ads you're turning off. Winning ads is where you're going to start changing your bids, and yellow ads you're going to start to make the conversions and tweaks for. Cool. So it looks like we're good on pace budgeting. Let's move on to number 2. And this is what I call mirror reaching. And here's where we're looking to go wide as opposed to going deep. And the basic premise here is you take your winning ad sets, so the ones that are green lit, and the ones that you have, pace budgeted as high as you can go, and then you had to scale back because you got diminishing returns. And now, in order to remain profitable within your magic metric, you're going to take that winning ad set or ad sets, and rather than increasing your daily budgets on them, you've already done that as far as you can go. Now, you're going to duplicate that exact ad set, leaving everything in place, and you're going to start your daily budgets again where you started the first time, at 3 to 5x your magic metric. And you're going to now pace budget this ad set number 2. So again, to reiterate here, you are duplicating your winning ad sets, and you are going to start your daily bids at, again, 3 to 5x your magic metric, or 1 to 2x your magic metric, and you are going to pace budget this new duplication. And keep in mind, you can duplicate these out as many times as you need, depending on how fast you want to do this and how big your audience is. So the screenshot you're seeing here is literally where we've duplicated the exact same ad set 6 or 7 times. So we had main copy 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, which are all identical. We increased the daily budgets, as you can see, as high as we can go in each one of them, pace budgeting them. And then as you can see, as we started to get into the later ad sets, they weren't working as well on the higher budgets, so we had to scale down the budgets. Again, the thing that you are watching here the whole time is your green, yellow, and red. If it's green lit, you're going to pace budget. If it's yellow, you're going to modify and tweak. And if it's red, you're simply going to turn it off. And that's your only kind of indication of what you're going to do with it. But here, what you're going to do is multiply them out. In other words, mirror them. So in theory, what we're talking about here is, let's say that you have a $500 a day spend that you can spend on a particular ad and or ad set. You will actually find yourself much more profitable if you're doing 5 ad sets at $100 each a day versus 1 ad set at $500 a day. All of our data has shown this. And so when you hit the point of diminishing return, when you're pace budgeting, you're going to scale back. You're going to duplicate that ad set and start from kind of ground zero and pace budget this whole thing up. Now, please note that not all of your new ad sets are going to perform the same as your original ones. Some of them may, some of them may not. Some of them might be a little bit more expensive, but it doesn't matter. At this point, it's going to allow you to spend more money and reach more people in less time. So for all of our webinar people, this is a great strategy. And remember, if anything goes into red light, you're simply going to turn it off. So don't freak out about it. You're duplicating, you're watching, and then anything goes into red light, you're turning it off. And you can do this at whatever pace you need to. Just keep in mind at the end of the day that not all of them are going to perform identical to each other, and you may reach a daily budget max that is less than your original ones, like on 2, 3, and 4. And don't freak out about that. Again, you're simply watching that. All right? So let's open it up to Q&A. That is stage number 2, where you're going to do mirror targeting, and you're going to get that, or mirror reaching, on top of your pace budgeting. Questions. Greg says, does this mess with frequency? The answer is kind of a little bit, but it doesn't even really matter all that much, because your frequency is going to be different on every ad set. And you're watching the red, yellow, green, so you can make a difference, or you can turn off, as needed. Daryl's asking, is this rollout process for scaling? Start with pace budgeting, then at some point start mirroring, and then after do 3 and 4. Yes, the answer is correct. These are stages on top of each other that you want to follow, Daryl, not just all at the same time. So they are scaled on top of each other and staged out that way. Seamus saying, can you make, say, 5 duplicates of one successful ad set and pace budget them simultaneously, or do you have to do one at a time? Great question, Seamus. The answer is you could do 5 of them simultaneously, but we have found that it works better when you do one at a time. But again, that's depending on your time constraints. If you have time constraints, you can do them multiple times and just watch them like a hawk to make sure that they all stay green. Someone asks here, one sec, questions are coming in fast. So all these duplicated ad sets are the exact same, or do you tweak each one after duplicating? The answer is yeah, they're all exactly the same. But if you have some stress about thinking that it's competing with each other, which I've never found to be the case, but if that gives you a headache, go ahead and change the year variation by like 1 year. So if it's your ad set 1 is going from the ages of 25 to 55, make ad set 2 26 to 55 and ad set 3 27 to 55. That's, again, not necessarily proven, but if it gives you a headache and better peace of mind to do it out that way, go ahead and do that. What type size audiences are you considering when duplicating a lot of ad sets? Again, it doesn't really matter here. If ad set duplicate 3, 4, and 5 don't work, simply turn them off and run 1 and 2, right? So the question is, how much time do you have to reach your audience, and how big are they can determine how many duplications that you do. Henny asks, have you split tested 5, 25, 50, and 100-day budgets against each other and see the daily budget converts best? Yeah, we have, but by force, because certain ad sets will only perform at $25 while others will perform at $100 budgets. So again, all we're watching are the colors of the lights and making the adjustments accordingly. And again, by pace budgeting, you're going to know exactly what realm that you need to be in. Anka says, aren't you targeting the same audience? Yes, you are, but that's the point. It's a large audience and you're trying to reach more of them to get more things in front of them. Do you mirror ad sets or entire campaigns? Again, Travis, everything's at the ad set level here. Couple of questions here. Do you always duplicate the original or do you make duplicates of the duplicates? I will always duplicate the original. That's a great question. Cool. So it looks like everybody is getting this. Let's move on now to stage 3, right? So once you've pace budgeted, and then from pace budgeting, you've reached your top on your ad set. So you started mirror reaching. If you're finding, and most people, this is good enough. I mean, most people can literally stop there and you're going to be taken care of and all as well. But other people, you may find that these are not enough and you still want to spend more money or reach more people, or you want to do it at a faster pace. Here is where you will go into stage 3. Now, stage 3 is what I call variate. And essentially, in its simplest form, it's adding or testing variations at the ad set level with the winners. So literally you're going to duplicate winning ads, but you're now going to add variations into those ad sets and test to see how well they do. Now, variations can include a whole bunch of things. Now, here's an example where you can variate on the age bracket. So you can do them at 5-year age brackets or 10-year age brackets or whatever. You can variate at male or female and gender. Basically what you're looking to do is, if you want to reach your audience faster and you want to reach them harder, you can break down these campaigns, or these ad sets, I apologize. You can break down these ad sets into smaller segments and add variations to them in order to spend more and reach them at the same pace. So you could do, again, age brackets, you can do gender brackets. Again, the goal here really is more variations of the winning ad sets to the same large audience so you can reach more of them faster. Now, my personal favorite way to execute the variate campaign is to do image variations. What you see on your screen here is the exact same copy and the exact same ad going to the exact same audience, but in order for me to reach more of them in the confined space that I had, I simply duplicated the ad sets. I kept the copy intact, but now rather than having one ad image, I had 4. Now you could do 2, you could do 3, you could do 4. It doesn't even really matter here. As long as you're adding the variables, because most people, when I see them running their campaigns, they're literally relying on one ad to carry all the weight of the campaign. And when that ad flops, they're in big trouble. So think about this. If you had one ad working and you pace budgeted that ad set and you mirror reached that ad set and it was still working and was highly profitable for you, imagine then what would happen if you had 2 ad sets, variations that did the exact same thing, or you had 3, or you had 4. Essentially what you're having here then is 4 times the reach, you're having 4 times the spend, and technically if you are following stages 1 and 2, you should have 4x the profit. Okay? So some people might be asking, well, why do I choose image rather than age or something else? Really, I believe that the image carries the most weight in any ad set, and that's why it is the first thing that we test. So as a general rule of thumb here, I am always going to test 2 image variations at any given time. So no matter what is happening, if I'm going after a particular interest, I am always going after 2 images, I'm always using 2 images at any given time because I want to reach double the people. And this way, not only can I double my reach, but here's a reality. I realize that different people are going to respond differently to different things. So in this case, I actually have higher probability for more winners if I have multiple images than if I'm relying on one. And here's the game changer. If they are all green lights, then this is going to allow me again to reach 4 times the people at 4 times the spend if I just had one ad. So I'm hoping that's making sense to you. So what you want to do is at least have some variables in your winning ad sets. Again, I like to use images, but you can use whatever variables you want, whether they be age or gender or age brackets or whatever. I like to use images. And then let's say you do that, then you can test with copy variations. So let's say you have the same image, but you have 2 different copy variations, or you have 4 different copy variations. So all of this is going to allow you to remove or reach more of your pool at a faster pace while still maintaining ROI, because again, you are watching red, yellow, and green. And this should really keep you busy and reaching a whole ton of people. So that's phase 3, what I call variate. Let's turn it back over to you to see if there are any specific questions around variate. Travis says, changing images means one of the images will result in lower I, so do you still run it and suffer the lower ROI? Yeah, the answer is if it's green lighting, it doesn't matter, I'm going to run them. If they're red lighting, then you want to turn off the red light one. Are you always, Aaron is asking, are you always using website conversion ads, or is there a way to show a conversion cost on PPE or see click to website? Yes, Aaron, we are generally using conversion ads, but you can still track conversions when you're running PPE or clicks to website. You just need to pull it up in your reports and at the ad level say that I want to track my pixels. Someone says, sounds like something that Ad Espresso does. Is there a reason you don't recommend it? Yeah, because it doesn't set up the ad sets like I want them to. It lumps many ads in one ad set, and that's why. Scott's saying, image variation. Do you get this at the pawn level or at each level? So great question. At the pawn level, I'm always split testing at least 2 different image variations because I want to see which is going to work and which isn't. But when we get it to the lake level and the ocean level, it's less about seeing which ones work better, and it's more about just doubling my reach and getting more reach and spend with my profitable already winning campaigns. Caitlin is asking, what are some important things to keep in mind or consider when testing images and copy? Psychologically speaking, a couple things I'll say about that. Have your image pop and stand out. And 2, metaphorical images tend to work better than stock images or images of yourself, for example. Stock images don't work so well. Metaphorical images do, like you saw from some of the previous examples there. How often do you roll out test variations in batches? Every 24 to 48 hours? Yes, great point, Noah. Yes, every 24 to 48 hours. What's the most you've duplicated an ad set and keep everything the same? I think it was up to 10, but that was because we were doing it in a very launch-based scenario and we only had 7 days to actually execute on it. So that was that. Scott's asking, having text in your images versus no text, see large changes? Yes. On personal brands, the person in versus the person not. Yeah, we tend to use no images in our text, but we'll always split test 1 text versus 1 no text. And rarely will we ever use the person in the image for personal brands, because the reality is the cold market doesn't know you, and so they don't care. Retargeting ads using your face is fine, but usually for cold, we found that brand images of the person, of the influencer, tend to work less than better images. What do you optimize most for at the ocean level? Always optimizing for purchases if we can. That was Caitlin. Eden says, so do you add images to the current ad set? No, you're always duplicating and adding the image to the new ad set. Ryan says, from which source do you get most of your ad images? Oh man, there's 101 different sources you could get images. Just make sure they're all royalty free and you'll be good. Are you worried about overlap? The answer is no. Again, I've never had issues with overlap because you're green, yellow, and redding this. So you're only running stuff that's green. All right, so let's move into the last one here. It looks like everyone's pacing well. Let's move into the last one, phase 4 here. And not everyone will get here, but if you're finding that even if all the other 3 stages are not spending enough money for you and reaching the capacity that you wanted to reach it at, depending on what you're doing, you can go into stage 4. And I call stage 4 objectify. And at this point, I'm going to assume that you're probably running either a conversion campaign at the objective level or a clicks to website campaign. Hopefully a conversion campaign, but again, it could be clicks to website. It doesn't even really matter all that much. But here's the issue. Here's what we see happen all the time when you're going after broad audiences. For the sake of easy numbers, now these are not real numbers, these are easy numbers. Let's assume that you're going after a broad market that has a million people in that pool. Okay, so if you have 1 million potential reach in that pool, you may have wondered when you're running that campaign is, why does Facebook not reach my entire 1 million people? Well, here's the answer. Let's say you have 1 million people in that pool and you chose to optimize for conversions. What Facebook will do, it will go after the people in that 1 million person pool that is most likely going to convert as a conversion campaign. So maybe your conversions objective is going to reach 200,000 people of that 1 million person pool. And again, this is Facebook doing what you asked it to do. You said, hey, of this pool, go after the people who are most likely to convert, which is fine. But you're not going to reach your full 1 million. So if you want to reach even more of them outside your original, let's say 200,000 person pool, you can duplicate your high winning ad sets, but you're going to duplicate them into a new campaign, and you're going to change that campaign from, let's say, conversions over to clicks to website. And what that's going to do is it's now going to allow you to reach a different 200,000 person pool because the objective is different. And let's say you're doing that for some time and you see everything is going well and you want to reach even more of the pool, you can duplicate your winning campaigns on the conversion levels, and you can, your duplicate ad sets, and start a new campaign and maybe do PPE or page post engagements, which will allow you to reach a different 200,000 people pool. So in this case, what you're doing is you're saying, well, I've got 1 million people in my pool. I know that my particular conversion objective is only going to reach X number of those people. So what I need to do is figure out how to reach the others. And you do that by duplicating your winning ad sets and putting them in different campaigns with different objectives. And here's a screenshot that you can see from one of the campaigns that we were running. And you can see, because we needed to reach more people and do it in a hurry, we have conversion campaigns for desktop and mobile. We have PPE campaigns for desktop and mobile. And we have click campaigns for desktop and mobile. And all are performing slightly differently, but it's allowing us to reach more people in less time and reach the full extent of the audience that we are going for. Now, again, please understand this disclaimer. This might not work all the time. Your clicks to website is not going to work the same as your website conversions, and your PPE might not work the same as your conversions either. But it doesn't matter. All you're looking for are green lights. And as long as they're green, you're going to let them go. If they're yellow, you're going to modify them and tweak them and optimize them. And if they're red, you're going to turn them off. So if we were pushing really, really hard, okay, we're going to mix up our campaign objectives, and we're going to do that in order to reach more people. So here's a quick summary, and then we'll go back into Q&A specifically about the Objectify thing. But here's the summary. Number one, campaign architecture. Get your campaign set up in the right way, primarily one ad per ad set. Number two, understand your magic metric. Understand your green, red, and yellow lights. Know your max cost per acquisition, and determine all of your actions based on this number. Thirdly, understand ponds, lakes, and oceans. Start at pond level, then go into oceans, then allow your pixel to, start at the pond level, then go into lakes with lookalikes, and then oceans, always allowing your pixel to mature and then to do the heavy lifting for you. Then when it comes to the rapid scaling metrics, start with pace budgeting, 15 to 20% a day increases every other day until you hit the point of diminishing returns. Once you do, scale back 1 or 2 steps and move into mirror reaching. Duplicate the winners and start pace budgeting your winners from the bottom all the way back up to the top until you hit diminishing returns. Then, if you need to push even harder, or within a limited number of time, then you will variate. Add variation duplications to your winning ad set. So take your winners, duplicate them and start to add variations. Again, I will say use pictures or images and then maybe copy, but again, you can variate however you so desire. And then lastly, if you really need to push hard and reach more people, objectify. Duplicate your winning ad sets, but duplicate them into new campaigns with different objectives. And now I'm going to open up into some Q&A with regards to, again, objectify or anything we covered at large. So Devin says, that's brilliant. The duplication into new campaign objectives, that was worth a piece of the admission right there. Thanks, Devin. I love you, brother. Jeremy says, so that is changing the bidding at the ad set level or having new campaigns with different objectives. Jeremy, that's having new campaigns at different objectives. Brian is asking, if we're promoting 3 different products to the same audience, what is the best way to do that without overlapping the audience? Go ahead and overlap the audience. No problems there because it's different products. So treat them all as separate campaign. Daryl says, Nick drops the mic and exit the building. I did drop the mic, but I didn't exit the building because I got some Q&A to do here. Seamus says, sounds like for a launch, we need to start 4 weeks or more ahead of time, pace budgeting starting at $20 and moving up, $20 a day increase, then starting 2-week cycle that mirrors, and then 4 weeks. Seamus, the short answer is if you have a launch and you have a pre-launch window to generate leads, think about all 4 stages and you can just escalate or increase the velocity at which you're rolling these out. So if you are doing that, you could start 4 weeks in advance, sure, no problem. Or if you have a very tight time frame, just escalate the process faster in that process. Caitlin says, do you always use exclusions for clicks from other campaigns so that you don't reach the same people? Yes and no, Caitlin. I don't care about reaching the same people because I realize if I'm going to use different images or different angles, the same people might respond differently. What I've also found is if I'm targeting purchasers, yes, it might be waste of a click, but what I find is that purchasers are my greatest ambassadors. And so sometimes I have purchasers actually comment on my ads, being an evangelist for me, saying, this was the best thing I ever bought or attended or participated in. And so I don't mind targeting people who've already been involved in what I do, but then again, to each their own. Lauren is asking, when you are variating and duplicating ad sets, do you still bring the budget for that new ad set down? Yes. To be safe, the answer is yes. You do want to bring it down and start pace budgeting that one. But if you're lazy, like most people are, you can start higher. Again, just watch it very carefully to make sure that it's working the way that you need it to work. Charlie is asking, what is your recommendations when launching ads with the new Facebook Pixel account? Same thing. I'm using new pixels right now. I don't use the old pixels anymore for anything, so everything continues to apply. Michael's asking, when you set your initial targeting, are you separating gender and age? The answer is, at the initial targeting, no, I am not, unless I have a specific offer specific to males or females. Otherwise, I'm trying to go broad. And then if I need to, at the mirror or the other staging levels, then I will break them out if I need to variate. Let's see. If my purchase pixel is over 2,000 sales, is it mature enough to go after the main interest of my large age bracket? Yes. If it's 2,000, it's probably smart enough to go broad. Thank you. What do you do when you get high negative feedback, but your ad is still performing well? If it's high negative feedback and low positive feedback, I'm turning that off and I'm trying to figure out another variation. If it's high positive feedback and high negative feedback, I'll just watch that closely, as it usually doesn't seem to be a problem with that. But again, you do want to watch high negative feedback, and if it goes on for too long, you could get into some thin ice there. Let's see, Sanu says, do you use the same exact system for retargeting campaigns in the same way? The answer is no. Retargeting audiences are going to be much smaller, so we wouldn't do that. Let's see, really appreciate you taking the time, Matt is saying, to do this webinar. I have a much better understanding of how to structure everything now. Awesome, Matt. Thanks for being here. I appreciate that. David's asking, what is the downside of targeting a bucket of interest at the early stage of a campaign versus single interest? The problem is you don't know which one is a winner then. And I'm interested in only focusing on winners. And if you bunch a whole bunch of interests together, you'll never know which ones are winning and which ones are losing. Wes is asking, do you use CTA buttons 8 times out of 10? No. 2 times out of 10? Yes. Alfredo says, tag you on my wall. Thanks, brother. Appreciate it. Do you scale differently for carousel and video ads, image ads? No, it's all kind of the same. Just keep in mind the general rules that we talked about here that we are following. Question, Charlie, how would a new Facebook pixel be affected if you're running ads to a general e-commerce store with multiple different niches? Would the new tech pixel be smart enough to optimize for all the niches? Yes, as long as you're all sending them to the right place. The pixel will be trained the same way as the old pixel, so no worries there. Someone's asking, are you taking on any more private clients? The answer is no, not currently. We do have a wait list for that. We usually open up, usually a spot opens up once every other month or something like that. However, that all starts with an application process. So let me see what I got here. If you're interested, for the few who might be interested here, let me just do this. This might help you. Everything that we do on a personal level for those interested starts at an application level. Whether you choose to work with us on the consulting side of things or the private side of things, it starts with an app. So let me just type this in so you can see private clients if you want to do that. Or someone asking, do you have a consulting program or a coaching program? No, I don't do any coaching. But I do a consulting advisory program. Let me just paste that for you so you can see. And I'll just throw that up there so everyone can see that while we continue to answer some questions. There we go. So for those of you who are interested, if you want to be a pirate client, that should say private, my apologies. If you want to be a private client, again, we don't accept very many, and they open up once every other month or so. You can fill out an application there and we'll have someone have a chat with you. Or if you look at private consulting, which basically means you get one-on-one direction with me, basically unlimited 30-minute calls all year. We do masterminds and email support. You get a special private Facebook group. Private clients, it starts at $6,000 monthly to work with us on private client work, or $20K upfront plus rev share if you're in a launch scenario. If you're looking at private consulting or advisory, again, that's $2,500 a month for 12 months or a flat $25K one time. Again, you can fill out an app and we'll have a conversation about that. That just gives you unlimited 30-minute calls with me throughout the entire year for masterminds, email support, Facebook group, and all the rest of that in my training. So if you're interested, I'm just going to leave that up. We got a couple more questions here. What about events for your 3-day training? Greg, private message me. I'll let you know about that. NicholasKuzmich.com/intensive is where you can join me at our next intensive event. Those are killer. It's actually my favorite thing to do. NicholasKuzmich.com/intensive. I think that'll help. Ian says, on the days when campaigns perform bad, are you giving a negative ROI? You scale it down? No. So you don't want a knee-jerk reaction. If you have stuff that are working really well and you are watching them and all of a sudden one day you don't get the ROI, don't stress out about it. What you really should be doing is watching 3 and 7 day trends. 3 and 7 day trends are what's going to allow you to get a real good idea of how things are working over more than just one day. And this way you're not going to jump the gun too early. Noah says, thanks, man. This was giving me the line clarity that I needed. Awesome, Noah. Thanks for being here. Do you also see price increases at the end of quarters? Is this typical? Yeah, there's all sorts of things that cause price increases, holidays, quarters, supply and demand, obviously, all this kind of stuff. So just keep a note of that. And again, the general rule we're following is increase your customer value as much as you possibly can so you can increase your magic metric number. And that way you'll be able to, go at it all day long without worrying about that. For that, Diago, if I want my ads to run at specific times of the day, should I use lifetime budgets or daily budgets? I always use daily budgets and I control it manually from there. So I hope that helps. Let's see. When you hit 1,000, Don is asking, when you hit 1,000 conversions in the pond level, are you opening up the audience by widening the age range and interest? No. At that point, I'd go to the lake level and just use the lookalikes before you start to mirror reach those people. I hope that makes sense. Someone says, hey, Nick, killer stuff, buddy. Thanks for sharing. Awesome. I totally appreciate you being here. I find that the traffic that hits my site before 10 a.m. and after 10 a.m. is crap. Yeah, if that's the case, then schedule your bidding to be before, in between those times. And that way you don't have to worry about that. When you're starting new ads, any time of the day, Travis, yeah, always at the beginning of the day and not on a weekend. Have you had any success? Brian's asking for direct response targeting people with ads who have watched video ads. Yeah, those really don't work all that well. Brian, hope that helps. Alfredo, can I be a private client? Yes, fill out the app and we'll talk. We don't have an opening for at least the next 8 weeks, but fill out the app and again, we'll talk. It does say pirate. You're right. Private. Hopefully that fixed that. Hopefully, I don't know if you're seeing my screen, but hopefully that fixed that. David, it was awesome. Thanks, brother. Thanks so much for being here. I appreciate your time. Thanks for your time. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Wesley says thanks. Diago says thank you. Thank you. Thanks everybody for being here. I totally appreciate your time. I hope this was valuable to you, and I totally hope you're able to apply it. And most importantly, I would love to hear the results you're getting from this kind of stuff. Plaster that all over my wall. If you're not in the Facebook group, plaster it all over the Facebook group. I love to hear when things go well for people. Totally awesome. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Totally appreciate your time. Make it an amazing day. And I do look forward to hearing from some of you shortly. All the best, and we'll talk again real soon.